Welcome to EO Talks, Eastern Oregon's very own talk show, only here on EO Alive.
Hey, Eastern Oregon, thank you for joining us on this special day. This is normally the day when we talk about the CHD's MAT program, which is the Medical Assistant Treatment Program, having to help people get over their opioid addictions. But today we kind of have an urgent situation that we need to talk about, and we have a number of guests here with us. Chief Bell, who is the LeGrand Police Chief, Lisa Cully, who is a mentor to help people get through their addiction, Carrie Brigiotti, who you all know, we've spent lots of time together, and Aaron Griggs, who is also from CHD. Hey, thank you guys for being with me today here. And the reason we're having this conversation is because essentially the illegal input, and Gary, you'll have to correct me here if I'm wrong, but the illegal incoming opioids that some people are addicted to, some of them have been laced with, and we've seen this in our area, they're laced with fentanyl, and that has recently led to some deaths and overdoses. And so, I don't know, why don't you take it off, start and tell us about what's going on and how that is affecting us.
Sure. Thanks, Brent, for having all of us on, but I appreciate the opportunity to communicate with the community about this important topic. Look, over the course of the last several weeks, the LeGrand Police Department has seen what I feel is a pretty alarming trend in calls for service that appear to be related to overdoses of suspected counterfeit opioid pills. In several of these cases, we've recovered pills that are similar in appearance to the counterfeit fentanyl-laced opioid pills that have been related to fatal overdoses in communities all over Oregon and our nation, for that matter. Sometimes on the street, these pills are referred to or called blues or M30s. These overdoses that I'm referencing are still here locally. They're still under investigation, and we're working to have the pills analyzed so we know exactly what is in them. I can't emphasize enough that anyone who gets pills from anywhere other than a pharmacy should assume that they're counterfeit and they may contain potentially deadly amounts of fentanyl. The counterfeit pills that we've seen dangerously resemble pills manufactured by pharmaceutical companies. However, these pills contain fentanyl, a synthetic opioid that is 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine and up to 50 times more potent than heroin. Even tiny doses, as little as 2 milligrams, the size of 2 grains of salt, can be a fatal dose for most people, Brent.
Wow. And so I guess the first thing that comes to my mind is, what would be the motivation for even lacing? I mean, if you were an illegal drug manufacturer, why would anybody even do that? And maybe that doesn't matter, but it doesn't change the danger, but why? Why would people do that?
Yeah, the others may be able to respond to this as well, but from what I understand, Brent, fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. And so the vast majority, the information that we're getting is the vast majority of these are coming either from Mexico or China. And it's just ease of manufacture. And the strength of the synthetic opioid allows it to go a lot further. But the underlying problem is that they're not regulated. So there's no way of knowing how much of the synthetic opioid fentanyl is in each one of these tablets. And so from one pill to the next, I mean, you could have a different dosage, if you will, unlike if you get a prescribed medication through your pharmacy.
So tell us kind of how that's making its way onto the street. I mean, in the sense of, what are your officers experiencing, without disclosing personal information? Can you kind of tell us how that has manifested itself publicly over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, so any one of your viewers can do a Google search on M30 pills or blues or counterfeit, opioid pills, and they can see a lot of this information. This is pervasive, not only just in Oregon but around our country, and it's a number of different ways, Brent. And as you've mentioned, it would be irresponsible for me to share information about ongoing investigations. But what I can tell you is these pills can be distributed to end users through, the traditional ways of drug dealing, where one person purchased them locally from another person. And there's also an alarming trend where people are able to buy these through the internet. And obviously, there's a number of mechanisms that they're using in order to make that so that it's covert and it's challenging to investigate. But we are working with our partners with the FBI, because obviously any sort of sales of these that happen, not whether it's in our community or other places around the state and country, if it's internet sales, obviously it's crossing state lines. So the FBI is involved in this, and we all recognize the problem that's going on.
And if to our viewers, if you're out there and you have a question about any of this, I mean, this is a great panel of experts, and I just would encourage you to put those questions in the Facebook feed, and we will answer those questions the best we can or get them to our panel here. So, have we had deaths locally, Gary, that for the most part that we can attribute that this is probably the cause?
We have had overdose deaths in the last several weeks, Brent, unfortunately. So that I don't want to sanitize this too much, because we're talking about human beings.
Right.
And, these people they're someone's family members. So, unfortunately, we've had loss of life. And so our efforts, I know that my partners here, we just want to share information so that, let's just be honest. I mean, we all should know better than to take pills or ingest things into our body that we're not certain what they are. But, addiction is something that people struggle with, and these are human beings. But yes, we've had deaths. And, but I want to be clear, Brent, that the overdose deaths that we have had, we have very strong suspicions about the counterfeit opioid pills that we're speaking of being related, but it will be some time before we're able to get, actual analysis of those to know exactly what is actually in those pills.
Well, and you're absolutely right that, it's not everybody. I mean, and we talk about this a lot in the MAP program is that, everybody can make excuses for themselves, or they'll find themselves in a jam. It's not going to happen to me, but yeah, it can happen to your kid or your grandson or your nephew or, whatever, or you. And and I guess that's the thing that was surprising to me when we started talking about this conversation, is it hadn't really occurred to me that somebody recovering from a surgery with pain pills could find them in a place where they are addicted to opioid drugs, and maybe they cannot. And we all know that the pharmacies are trying to do a good job of triangulating with each other and communicating. So then to cut off that source of people using prescription drugs. And so it's not unlikely that somebody who's addicted could be looking for a source for the fix that they need, and could find themselves in a place just like this. And yeah, somebody that we know, somebody that we feel sympathetic for could end up overdosing. And so,
hey, Brent, can I jump in here?
Yep, absolutely.
I think one of the big reasons why we're here today is we're trying to save lives.
Right.
And pure and simple. We've got individuals in the community that do have challenges with opioids or have addictions. And we're not obviously we want to help provide resources and treatment, but more than anything, we want to prevent deaths. And we can figure out the treatment after that. First of all, let's make sure that if you are going to use, you're not going to be using one of these pills because you can die. And we've seen deaths in our community. And we don't want to have that at all because these are friends and family, regardless of whether or not they're having challenges with opioids. We just want to save their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aaron, why don't you continue? Kind of talk to us about, the overall reach of the MAT program for those people that might not know, and then how this kind of complicates it. I mean, how this affects the good things that you guys are trying to do.
Well, I think that, there's a number of things that we're trying to do. There is a relation to our medication for assisted treatment just because these are opioids, and we want to make sure that people get the treatment that they need and that they can get medication that we offer that will help them be able to mitigate the withdrawal symptoms that come with stopping using opioids, because it's unbearable. It's honestly, you talk to anybody that's gone through it, and it drives you to use again. I mean, it's like you have no choice but to use again. So the medication, buprenorphine, and others that we can assist with help individuals to be able to deal with that withdrawal so that they can actually get treatment. But even more so than that is that when an individual is experiencing an opioid overdose, whether it's from taking illicit pills, whether it's taking their prescribed medication that they have for pain, and they got too much of a dose, there is a drug that will save their life instantly, and this is naloxone. We distribute naloxone in the community. Lisa's going to talk about that here today. And we try to get that out in the community everywhere we can to make sure that people have access to that. They can save lives. The only way we can get people treatment is if they're still alive. So we have to first save them through things like naloxone.
Yeah. So Lisa, why don't you talk to us a little bit about how someone would identify that someone is overdosing, and then how they would administer naloxone if they had that available to them. And if they don't, where would they get that? I don't know. Talk to us a little bit of nuts and bolts about how, if we run into this situation, what should we do?
So one of the first things to look for an opiate overdose are things like pinpoint pupils. They are unconscious, low respirations and breathing, or they're not breathing at all. You can be super clammy. For lighter skinned people, they're going to be almost a bluish to purple color. Darker toned individuals be kind of an ashy gray type color. So what we have these here, and they are distributed through Union County right now. We have some set up at the Orchard Motel. There is Spruce Street Market. Neon has some, and the basement of the Presbyterian Church. And they're a little red box, so we call them Nalox boxes. They hold a couple doses of these red bags in them. These are what the dosage looks like. You open this up. Don't test it. There is one dose inside of each container. You insert it up the nostril and squeeze the plunger. You want to wait within a couple minutes. If person doesn't start regaining consciousness, then you can administer another dose. The thing with the fentanyl on the street right now is that it can take a couple extra doses to, start rousing people. There is a CPR mask inside each one of these and contact information for our Hope Line. You want to start rescue breathing, and you do want to call paramedics even if the person becomes responsive, because there can be additional effects of the opiates that need to be addressed by a medical professional. This is to literally just save a life at that exact moment so they can get, medical help, and then, hopefully we can get some other services wrapped around them to get them some long-term help. So.
And I talked to someone recently who had administered this in a situation, and he said, the person literally looked like they were gone. They were dead. There was no response whatsoever. And that it literally brought them back. I mean, it was, so it can be incredibly responsive. But in the meantime, and I think, Gary, you mentioned this offline a little bit, is that we still have to do the basic life support. I don't have that right, but I mean, if they're not breathing, you have a breathing mask. You got to give them breath. If they're not, heart's not beating, you've got to give them chest compressions. So all of the same thing, along with dealing with this naloxone and such, so on and so forth. Any of you guys want to comment about that?
The really cool thing about naloxone is that it doesn't interfere with any other medications. You can give it to everybody. It doesn't have any other interactions. It literally just stops an opiate overdose. So the way that it works is it goes in and it kicks that opiate out of the receptor, and that's all it does. So individuals who are administered Narcan are going to wake up pretty cranky, and they will be showing signs of withdrawal because that's what you've done. You've put them into a withdrawal state. So anybody who does administer this and sees that happening, that's what's going to happen. They're not going to be very happy, and they're going to be hurting, but you've just saved a life. So it's okay.
And Gary, you were going to say something.
Yeah, Brent, I was just going to say, anytime you have someone displaying, signs of distress, call 911. Report to the 911 operator that you think that somebody is overdosed. Make sure that you're able to give a location, like a street address. And if somebody's available, send them out to the street edge, to wait for the ambulance and help guide, first responders, to the victim. Try to rouse the person, like speak loudly to them, pinch them, rub your knuckles. We call it a sternum rub. So you can kind of form your knuckles, and rub right on the center of their chest, the bony part of the middle of the chest. What you're trying to do is rouse them out of, because they're basically going to be very groggy as if they're sleeping. But what we're trying to avoid is them stopping breathing. Make sure the person is breathing. If they're not, administer rescue breaths, what we call mouth to mouth. And if necessary, then administer the naloxone, or what we call Narcan. It's a brand name of naloxone, as has been described. And then make sure you stay with them. Stay there, monitor them, and wait until first responders are there to assist, and monitor their breathing, and if necessary, provide rescue breaths and start CPR.
And Lisa, I think you were saying earlier that the overdosing drugs can last longer than the Narcan. And so just because they're out of it, they come out of it right away, does not necessarily mean that they might not need more Narcan in a few minutes. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, essentially they can re-overdose, basically, because once the Narcan wears off, then the opiates can then bind back to the receptors and cause a dangerous situation. So again, this is just a right then, right now, save their life type thing before paramedics can get there and the rest of it. So, and depending on, I think I did mention with the fentanyl that can take, 2, 3, or 4 doses of the Narcan to actually kind of bring them back where they need to be. So,
yeah, what a scary situation that would be. particularly for those people that are trying to save that life, that person who's overdosing might not even remember, but still, what an awful situation. So Carrie, this kind of falls, you are the goddess of public health locally. and this kind of, so this is kind of a public health emergency. And that's kind of why we're having this conversation. What can we do? What can we do to help with this situation locally?
Yeah, so I would definitely consider this to be a public health emergency. Obviously, we've been talking so much this year, you and I, and our community about COVID-19, but, there are definitely other health issues that have continued to play out. And the fact that these really powerful and lethal drugs are in our community is an emergency that we need to deal with. And I think, I like to remind folks about public health and our approach to how we handle situations like this. And, obviously we want to help individuals, but our best approach using public health science is to try and create an environment in our community where people can make healthy choices, where our norms in our community change. And so, and where people have the information that they need so they can take actions to protect their health and the health of those around them. And so I think, first and foremost, we really want the community to understand that this lethal drug is out there, so they know what actions they can take to protect themselves from that drug. And I think, this drug in particular, if you're not getting your medication from a pharmacy, you have no idea what you're getting. And I have heard, my colleagues here say that such a small amount can impact you. So it could even impact me if I found one of these pills and just happened to pick it up and touch it. And so I think, everybody in our community needs to know that this risk is out there. I think the other thing that we have talked about today is that this is not just a problem that happens to other people. This could be our family members and friends that have a disease that causes them to seek out medications. And we really need to have, again, information so we can protect them, but also so we can potentially save their lives if they find themselves in a situation where they're experiencing an overdose. And, I think one of the norms that I would really like to see us adopt in our community is, number one, really recognizing that this is a problem that can happen to any of us, and that there are ways that we can prevent it. Number one, by providing the information about these drugs that are out there. But, we talked about the Naloxone Kits, and I just happen to have mine here. And I haven't had to use mine, and I really honestly hope that I never do. But just in case, I have it. And I know that if for some reason I encounter somebody that is overdosing, that I can literally take an action to save their life because I have this. And so I would really encourage people in our community, even if you don't think you'll ever use it or don't think you know somebody that would overdose, like if we all have one of these, we could save somebody's life. And I think that's what we're all here trying to do today. And I think, one of the other things, we deal with outbreaks in public health, right? So right now we are telling our community there's an outbreak going on. There is an outbreak of people taking these medications that can lead to fatal outcomes. And so we really need to take this problem seriously and protect our community. And so, I think all of us are here today showing a united front that we want the information out there so we don't have this emergency, take any more steps than it is taking right now. We can stop it.
So, Carrie, there's probably someone out there that they maybe have a family member or they're close to someone who might be struggling with opioid addiction. And they're like, man, I would love to have one of these things in my pocket. I would love to have. How would they get a hold of that? What's the procedure that they could do to get a hold of one of those kits?
So I'm going to let the rest of the team address that. I know that we talked about some sites in the community where you could get them. Lisa mentioned those, but there might be other ways to get them. So I want to let the rest of the team share where you can get one.
So you can call the Center for Human Development, and we have naloxone kits that we can get to you. You can also go to your local pharmacy and get naloxone. If you have the Oregon Health Plan, it's my understanding you can actually get that for free from your pharmacist. So there's a lot of resources, and Lisa mentioned, I think we have 5 Nalox boxes. They look like emergency kind of rescue box looking things that are on the wall in a few different locations in the community where you can pick those up, and we replenish those on a regular basis. More than anything, I think we want people to know that diversion programs like naloxone not only save people's lives, but it keeps them around for another day so that they can choose to make a change in their life and choose treatment. And we've seen that happen before, where somebody has overdosed, been saved through naloxone, and then made the decision very quickly to get into services and get treatment. So Lisa, did you want to add to that as well?
I did, just real quick. The Nalox boxes that we have set up, I've had the question asked, you do not need to like break the glass to get the kits out of it. The top just opens and shuts. Each place that they are at is in sort of a discrete location. You can find it easily, but to counteract the stigma and other things that can go along with retrieving this medication, we've tried to put it so people can see it, but it's not easily recognizable that they are getting it. And do not keep Narcan in your car or anywhere that it is subject for extreme heat or extreme cold, that it can lessen its effectiveness for it. So again, those locations they're on the side of the Orchard Motel. We have one at Spruce Street Market. There is one at Neon, and there is one at the basement of the Presbyterian Church, which also holds our local Narcotics Anonymous meetings too, if people are interested in that route also.
So the point of those boxes, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just add to what Lisa said. We are looking for more locations in the community that would be willing to host having a Nalox box set up in their organization or around their organization. This even could be placed in places of business as well. So this medication is not dangerous. If somebody was to get a hold of it and administer it, and they weren't going through an opioid overdose, it's not going to lead. It's not going to be harmful to them. So it's safe for us to have out in the community and for people to get. And even if you just want to have it and you see it there, get it from the box. We're going to replenish it.
Right. Good. And that was kind of where I was going. So it's not like a fire extinguisher that's going to be to cover a fire that is nearby. That's not the point. The point is it's an access point for people. So if you are in that exact situation, maybe you're a user and you worry about, hey, I'm in this bind, I'm in this situation, and I can't get out of this funk right now, but I don't want to die. And so this is a place where they can access that themselves, put it in their pocket. And yeah, so there's an access point for them. So one of the questions that came up on Facebook is the Good Samaritan Act. Gary, can you talk to us about that and how that helps in this kind of a situation?
Yeah, certainly, Brent. I'm happy to. This came about because there was a period of time where, people would be with someone who overdosed, and out of fear that they would get in trouble through criminal prosecution for some drug offenses or something, they wouldn't call for an ambulance. They wouldn't call for assistance. And so that led to a lot of people overdosing and dying. And so with this Good Samaritan law, if someone is overdosing, you can call for medical help. Call 911. Don't be concerned, because you cannot be arrested or prosecuted for possession of drugs or drug paraphernalia, being in a place where drugs are used, or for violating probation or parole if it's because of a drug use or possession. So the idea, Brent, behind this is we just don't want people to die because no one will call. because they're afraid that they're going to get in trouble with the law if there's drugs there at the scene.
Good. And again, somebody on Facebook just commented, hey, I tried to get one and it was $135 for my pharmacy. Again, they just need to reach out to CHD and you guys will help that. And I'm going to, while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to put the number up here for someone who is struggling with opioids addiction. They call this number. They'll help you get started on the program. Even if you're not ready to get on the program, they'll kind of talk to you about what the choices are and the solutions that are out there for you. So good. Well, anything else that go ahead.
Even if you want to just get naloxone from us. We also are planning in June to have a couple of events where people will advertise it in the community, where people will come be able to just drive by and pick some up. So be on the lookout for that as well. Give us a call. We'll get you some.
Good. Well, wow, what an unexpected place that we are in right now, and this just seems like, for someone who is struggling with the addiction, this is just a cruel joke on top of all of that, that there's something that, could cause their death. And again, I think the point that Gary, that you've said a couple of different times is that, and multiple of you have, and that is that if you're getting drugs from any other place than your pharmacy, you can't count on the consistency, the dosage, the purity. You're kind of rolling the dice with whatever you get, right?
All right. Hey, Brent, if I could real quick, it's a good opportunity also to remind people that if you have expired or unused, unneeded medications in your home, or what we find sometimes, Brent, is, people will have a loved one that passes away and they're in the process of cleaning out their home and they find a bunch of medications. We now, more so than ever before, we have responsible, safe ways that people can dispose of those types of things. We have drop boxes here in the lobby of the police department. There's one at Grand Run Hospital, one at Red Cross Drug, and I'm under the understanding that there's soon to be one at Rite Aid Pharmacy as well. No questions asked. You can just drop that stuff in there and it will be safely disposed of. It's really important because we know a lot of times, Brent, that particularly young people that get pills, oxy, things like that, sometimes it's coming out of medicine cabinets in homes of family members. So can't stress enough to just, if you don't need that anymore, just don't keep it around and safely dispose of it.
Great. Thank you, Gary. All right. Well, anyone else before we quit have anything that we haven't covered?
I just want to say that if you are struggling, reach out, whatever type of addiction that is. I work with an amazing team for an amazing company, and we are more than willing to put our arms around you and help you. And it's social distancing, of course, in any way that we can. So if you are struggling with addiction, we can help. So.
And Lisa, you and I had a great conversation a couple of weeks ago where you shared your own story. And the reason that you can understand this plight so much is that you were there. You were someone who has recovered.
Yep.
And so then, and your job is a mentor for those people that come into the MAP program and need someone to kind of coach them along. And that's awesome.
Yep. We like to call it lived experience. So I've been there and done that. So I'm more than willing to help along the way. So
excellent. Well, great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for taking the time to be here. And once we're done, just stay online for just a second and we can have a little bit of a conversation. But thank you, Eastern Oregon, for joining us. And we will see you next time right here on EO Live.